Good afternoon. Today is June 4th. It is 2:33 p.m. I'm opening today's final work session on the budget. Councilors, as a reminder, budget work sessions are where we have a chance to discuss proposed amendments, but not move, vote, or receive public testimony. Today's work session is not organized around a specific topic, but rather is intended to be an opportunity to daylight any final budget amendments prior to our budget committee meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. I anticipate that this will be a shorter work session. My hope is that we can complete our work by 4 or 4:30 today. We have a variety of staff from the administration to help us with any questions on these items, including, of course, our budget team. And I'd like to share many thanks to our budget team and their continued work on this process as we work through our first city budget in this new form of government. So with that, I will open the discussion for this work session, and I am looking to the queue for any councilors who would like to share. Councilor Canal.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Can I ask a question? Last time we did this process, one of the purposes of bringing these up verbally in the work session was so that the council, or the Finance Committee could evaluate and discuss that. Is that process anticipated again, or is this mostly for broad transparency with colleagues and the public prior to the meeting next week and next week?
I think this is more about broad transparency with each other and with the public.
Great. So just to clarify, that means finance is not pre-discussing these?
I believe they are not. But.
Okay, I'll maybe direct that back to Councilor Zimmerman in a minute, but.
There's nothing on the finance agenda related to the current budget.
Thank you.
This is also a time if any councilors would like to share if there are amendments that they're pulling back and retracting, you can do that at this time also. Councilor Dunphy.
Great, thank you. To get our conversation started, first I just wanted to note that I will be bringing a new amendment that is actually a revision of an amendment we passed from the dais 2 weeks ago, related to using the TNC fees that we have increased to direct those towards the work that we approved towards Vision Zero. We got some of the language, I got some of the language incorrect, and I'll be bringing something forward specifically to try and correct that, functionally just directing which pot of money the Bureau will be drawing from for that. Additionally, I will be pulling back my amendments related to the small business licensure. Haven't identified a cost, but I would like to bring that forward as a policy in the near future. And additionally, so it's Dunphy 6 will be pulled back, and Dunphy 5 additionally for now will be pulled back as I have not identified funding for that.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Canal.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I will talk about the ones I'm keeping later on, but I just wanted to note Canal 7 and 8 were already voted on, as was 1. I'm withdrawing 2, 6, 9, and 11, and I'm going to get some new information and may also withdraw the note 14 based on that or not. And I'll come back with a couple new ones later on in this conversation, just making sure I have my notes together.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, this is a work session. We can discuss proposed amendments, but we cannot move, vote, or receive public testimony. And we're not organizing around any specific topic, but this is an opportunity to daylight any final budget amendments prior to our two budget committee meetings next week. Councilor Novick?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. It will surprise absolutely no one that I will be withdrawing my proposed amendment to close the Multnomah Arts Center and the Community Music Center. I thought I'd put that in the record. Also, Councilor Clark and I plan to bring a proposal to fund some of the PBEM positions that I previously proposed funding with a larger cut in council budgets. I'd like to add 2 planner positions. But, of course, in the mayor's budget, eliminated the 1 planning position and a training and exercise position. That's about $625,000. And I'm proposing to fund that by reducing our council office budgets by $52,833.33 apiece. I will note that I did something recently that I had not inexcusably hadn't done before, which was look to see what other cities spend on their council office budgets. In Seattle, it's about $1 million per office. In Denver, it's about $750,000 per office. So I hope that people's concern for being prepared for emergencies, particularly the the potential CI hub emergency, will compel people to cut back our budget to still dramatically higher than Seattle's or Denver's. And we're also going to propose to add a position to address CI hub issues in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and to fund that with $170,000 of the $300,000 that we're currently in excess in discretionary funds. That's because council office budgets can't be directly used dollar for dollar for BPS, because BPS is an operational bureau. The reason it's particularly efficient to use council budgets for PBEM is PBEM's an overhead bureau. So, Councilor Clark, do you want to add anything to that?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Murillo.
I just have a question first for my colleagues. So obviously we passed the $2 TNC fee. I'm supportive of it. And it sounds like there has been pushback on that. I'm not in favor of reducing it, but I was wondering if someone's bringing something forward to reduce it just so we can plan, because if that's the case, we're going to have to adjust a lot of our revenue discussions.
Councilor Clark?
I'm not bringing forward anything to reduce it, but I do want to make a point that, we're all anticipating $11 million coming from the state transportation package, which is still up in the air. So I'm going to make sure that any funds from TNC or anywhere else that we're putting into PBOT stays there. I don't want anybody to get sticky fingers here, because we could end up with a shortfall, depending on what the legislature does.
Don't worry, Councilor Clark. I only moved golf to parks because they're part of the same entity. I won't do that with your TNC fees.
Councilor Novick.
To add on to Councilor Clark's point, in addition to not wanting to shift that money outside of PBOT, it would be prudent now to not designate it for specific purposes within PBOT, because we might just need it to backfill the state money we might not be getting. It may be that we could just sort of leave the money. If we do get the state money, we could leave the TNC money with PBOT for them to use their discretion. Alternatively, if we've got the state money, we could look at it in the fall bump and see if we want to specifically allocate it.
Seeing no one else in the queue, meeting adjourned. I'm kidding. Not funny? Councilor Koyama Lane.
All right, colleagues, I plan to bring a budget note and an amendment to you all in service to building a somewhat shared action plan and finding a common path forward between City Council and the executive side related to civic life, engagement, equity, sustainability, and communications. I've spoken with many of my colleagues, and folks on the executive side, city staff over the past week or so. While everyone has their own unique perspective on what needs to happen with civic life, I've also heard consistent awareness and interest from everyone in a few areas, such as improving the functions and the programs currently under civic life, maintaining current funding levels for many of those programs, ensuring that the vital programs now housed in the Office of Civic Life have an opportunity to be supportive and to achieve their visions, avoiding potential actions that might lead to adversarial relationships between the legislative and executive branch, and co-creating a unified strategic vision for what things like engagement, equity, neighborhood, communications, what that will look like in this new form of government. So we all understand that civic life has gone through a lot, had different iterations, challenges, ideas brought to them, and there has been work to create recommendations for change, most of which have not yet been implemented. So some of which are now only being used to define needed changes in structure and reporting assignments. So I've had the opportunity to see a preview of some of these changes. It feels important to allow our professional staff to bring them forward to council for presentation and consideration before taking significant action through the budget process. So it is my hope to find somewhat of a common ground where priorities for programs are honored through funding, and also give time to allow changes to be presented and considered. I'm happy to share any of this with you. I know some of you have said, can I get a peek at it? And I am happy to show you. So I'm looking at a budget note to direct the city administrator, Office of Civic Life, and any related programming to work collaboratively with the council in developing a single unified plan that addresses the structural and programmatic challenges within the Office of Civic Life, and how that relates to the Office of Engagement, Office of Equity and Human Rights, Office of Sustainability, that there's collaboration and that council gets a full briefing no later than August 1st of this year to tell us what are the current structures and staffing changes, what are key recommendations for change from previous processes, any proposed changes to structures and staffing. So we're included in that. Also, an amendment to restore funding for the Diversity and Civic Leadership Program, neighborhood associations, district coalition offices, including small grants, and specifying that that funding is expected to be found through administration and operations in civic life and engagement. That is what I'm planning to bring forward.
Councillor Clark, you have a question on?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. Councillor Koyama-Lane, it sounds like Noah's Ark. You're building Noah's Ark. Are my animals in there as well?
Yeah, okay, I was just realizing, I was like, this part wasn't in there. Your animals are in there.
Okay.
There's also going to be a budget note about community partnership, the community partnership framework that you brought forward. As I was speaking to different district coalitions, they were talking about how supportive they were of the language you were using. And so having part of the budget note is to also say that we're addressing structural budget deficits through development of a community partnership support framework, and asking that this also be applied to our relationships with district neighborhood coalitions. And this is not fully baked, and so I will get this to you today, and I would love to make sure you have your eyes on it.
Super, thanks.
Councillor Knoll, do you have a question for Councillor Koyama-Lane?
Yeah, it's the same question. Are my animals in there too? And I think Councillor Zimmerman and Councillor Avalos may also have some potential animals for this one. But yeah, I feel bad. The question around ensuring the council itself has some capacity for engagement.
There was conversation about seeing if one FTE could be pulled from the neighborhood program and put under council operations. I don't have to have a final decision yet on that, right? I'm supportive of if that makes sense for there to be one position after hearing a lot of perspectives about how moving all of engagement under council operations would not be best. I can see it making sense for one position to move over. So that's the possibility still on the table.
Councilor Zimmerman, would you like to describe your animals?
No. So I'll just reemphasize that this is kind of a repackaging of an amendment I've already made. And I'll remind you that the neighborhood coalitions took a pretty significant defunding in the proposed package of grants of their operating funds, that they defunded part of the diversity and leadership program, and my amendment to scrap the administrative positions that exist in civic life refunded all those programs and expanded the immigrant and refugee programs. This sounds like a polishing of a way to preserve civic life, and I'm not sure that preserving civic life should be the thing that drives here when they promoted their own folks over these programs, right? And I think these programs are what I'm trying to speak to in terms of the neighborhood coalitions are our in so many ways when it comes to engagement. I'll also remind you just that earlier this spring, just how troubling it was to go through an experience where civic life leadership completely pulled a 180 on the council president and I as we started trying to set up the budget listening sessions. And so if I feel a little burned about that, I do. If I sound a little burned about that, I do. But who didn't burn me was the diversity and leadership program, the immigrant and refugee program, the neighborhood coalition program. And my amendment that I read into much earlier in this process still preserves all that without sugarcoating what is a bureau who I think for the last almost 10 years has been clearly on life support for a variety of reasons. But I'm also really looking forward to a new era with a new city administrator who gets to articulate what community engagement can actually look like in this community. But I don't know that we're going to be successful at that if we keep the old shadows cast on the way we do it in this city. So part of my effort in making sure we fund the things that help us was also giving us a fresh start. And I am a little bit concerned that we won't be able to get that fresh start with this newest proposal from you, Councilor Koyama Lane. And so I really respect the work I'm putting in, because I think a number of us have some related type of package here, but it also costs us something if we accept yours. It costs us the new chapter because it keeps us in the old one. And so from that perspective, I'm going to give it a full vetting when you get the language together and see it. But I'm pretty concerned that the same old habits will still exist in this new version of what you're talking about, and that civic life will be limping along with even fewer and still holding on to some old habits that should die. So thank you for the discussion on it. I think most of all, I'll be looking at how do we restore the neighborhood and district coalitions and associations, because they have been just tremendous in this new form of government for me as a district representative. Thank you.
Councilor Koyama Lane, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, my response is I hear all of that, and I appreciate that you've been willing to meet with me and speak about this, Councilor Zimmerman. And I see your, the way I folded in what you care about, which really is the cuts of resources from these programs, is something that I have also prioritized. We have gotten there in different ways, and my hope is that that you bring forward yours, but if you don't have full support, that maybe we would consider looking at this and seeing it as at least a way to make sure that those programs are made whole. Based on just having a lot of conversations, what I was told, and this is just what I was told, was that what many city employees heard from us on the dais is that we didn't want to see a lot of layoffs. We didn't want to see positions cut. And so that was why some of the programming was cut, that folks felt like they received that information from us, and that is why the positions were preserved. I hear all of the different ideas and understand that there are many places where there seem to be a disconnect. And I will say having all these conversations, helped me learn a lot about engagement. And what I did see is that this really goes back decades. There are some budding plans that would be rolling out soon for where engagement's going. I would like to see where those go and how they unfold. But we can also talk more about this next week at the meeting.
Councillor Ryan, I had skipped over you because I thought you were not in the queue to ask a question here, but did you want to ask a question of Councillor Quayama-Lane? Okay. Councillor Quayama-Lane, did you have other proposals? Okay. Councillors, I'm in the queue to flag that Purtle-Guinea 2, which was half of the PP&D program reserve, which would have set money aside specifically for hiring up PP&D staff, I'm going to withdraw that amendment and bring forward a budget note which would direct PP&D to bring us the report that is listed in that amendment on what the economic outlook is and whether they expect to need more staffing or not in the fall. At that time, we can decide if we have funds available to move forward with supporting staff if their report shows a need for it, but we wouldn't be pre-setting aside funding for that purpose. I wanted to flag for you all that I'd be making that change. Councillor Ryan?
So we're in a work session to once again shop and repeat and talk about how our amendments are evolving. Is that what's happening today?
If you have new amendments, I was told that many of our colleagues had new amendments or significant changes.
Oh, okay.
And in order to save time at the council meeting and devote time there to debate and voting,
Okay.
Some folks I think have proposals they're still working on that they're not bringing forward today, but if you have new things we haven't heard about that you'd like to bring forward
Well, some
today,
haven't sounded new, but I've actually
opportunity.
appreciated it because there's been a lot of amendments floating around, so it's been helpful to see how they're commingling. So, I real quick, I have one. This is probably good news. Pulling off an amendment. I have the fewest now. I have even fewer. Ryan Amendment 4 for temporary employee furloughs. That's been pulled back, and that's because we have new information we've received that made it clear this is not an equal swap with the mayor's proposed budget capping COLA and merit for non-reps as we originally thought. So that one's being pulled back.
I have Ryan 4 listed as City and Prosper Portland grants inventory. Is that, you're saying something different there?
I am.
Okay.
We'll double check that.
6, I'm hearing maybe it's Ryan 6. I'll get the number
I
right.
don't have the same thing in front of me. Can we take advantage of sitting next to each other?
We can, and I see Haley from the
It is
the
6?
chair there saying it's Ryan 6.
I trust you. All right. there we
Okay,
go.
we're going with Ryan 6 is being pulled back. Thank you,
All right.
Counselor.
Thank you. I'm going to have one for the Portland Parks Tennis Partnership. I mentioned that last week. It'll be a way to save money and improve conditions for our children and families. I do have a couple more that relate to the saving and supporting our storefronts, probably the constituency that's received the least amount of attention over the last 5 years, and they're quite angry. And one thing we don't have is we don't have very good data on how many storefronts we have. We don't have an inventory. This just really works with the small business office at Prosper on storefront vacancy surveying, exit interviews to why people are leaving their empty storefronts. Businesses in Portland have reasons to close their businesses and leave, but it's better to hear directly from them, like an exit interview, if you will. So we just want to get to the bottom of that information. And so I'll have more details on that for all your offices. And then the third one is supporting our storefronts with business safety and livability. This is a very comprehensive herding the cats, if you will, formalizing initiative to build upon existing efforts across the city bureaus to offer the business storefronts consistent and managed approach to related problems. This will focus resources on significant challenges faced by them with crime, vandalism, and livability issues. The core of the proposal involves formalizing and enhancing the coordination between the city work units, including the police bureau, the bike patrol, the neighborhood response teams with Portland Solutions, PMO, and IRT, impact reduction teams, and SSCC. I think with the mayor's overnight shelters, the day shelters that are kind of coming in from the county. It's now more important than ever to make sure we have a system in place to manage the challenges on the streets when we keep adding these services. So it will provide deliverables like consistency of response, centralized tracking system, information sharing protocols, proactive approaches in general. So we will be sending those details to all your offices as well.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Canal?
Thank you, Madam President. So I mentioned some that I'm withdrawing. I may also withdraw Canal 3 based on after I review the work of the Council Vice President. I may come at it from a different starting point, but I think I ended up where Councilor Zimmerman's at on it, which is I'll read it and then make a detailed assessment of if my proposal is captured in it or not. Canal 4 I'm going to be altering to just focus on the recreation hours, alternative community service, park ranger service dispatchers, and home sharing pilot. Portions related to golf fees, TNC fees, and Sunderland will be removed. I'm having an additional revenue source scored for this, but I don't have the numbers yet. So I know CBO is working hard and not trying to shame me there. 10, 12, and 13 are notes. I won't spend time on it, but I'm going to be amending the text of 10 to just make it clearer. And then I wanted to flag 3 other things. I'm planning to scale down the ongoing to one-time switch proposal in Canal 5. It's currently $2.5 million. I'm going to focus it on chat and OVP ceasefire, given feedback I've received from BOEC and its director, our new interim DCA. I may submit a new Canal 15 based on conversations with Councilor Novick and based on his Novick 3 to use some of the banked contingency funding for the overhead portion of that. We were up at the end on May 21st for PBEM. And finally, I'm going to be proposing, and I'm still workshopping this one with at least one colleague, a revised version of the Canal 1, the Robin Hood Amendment, that this originally proposed reducing over the course of the year the spending on non-public safety general fund bureau deputy directors through position reductions or reclassifications to the manager series, which reflected the comments we've received about management bloat, and that money would have been used to replenish the Office of Equity and Human Rights, bring back the entire team of 1 for racial equity, one of the 2 people on the LGBTQIA2S+ team, and one of the 4 people on the ADA team, along with an administrative assistant. And I'm working to try to adjust this one to focus it more tightly on both ends, more clearly defining which deputy director positions are not included in this and therefore safe, and also more tightly choosing which positions would be retained, focusing on the programmatic roles. And this one was proposed in its original version and it tied. So I am working to see if conceptually, if this is something that there is interest in as well. And I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Can I ask Councilor Canal a question?
Yes, Councilor Clark, go ahead.
So are you talking about Canal 1? You're going to revive that?
Not as is,
Okay.
with more tightly revised where the money would go.
Okay, and then you were talking about Canal 5?
Yeah, that was not proposed, that we didn't talk about. It
Right.
was, yeah, so that was $2.5 million, and I'm going to amend it to a significantly smaller amount on both ends.
Okay, can we talk about that offline later?
I'd love to.
Yeah, thank you.
Counselor, just a flag on Canal 1, because that was voted on and failed, I'm not sure that you can bring it back up. You may need to put that language in a new amendment to bring forward, or have somebody who voted no bring it up for you to offer further amendments to it. I'm not positive on an amendment if that's the case. I just suggest that you consult with our attorneys before you take that approach.
Yeah, I'm making sure that it makes sense the way I've revised it before going to that part, but I hear you.
Counselor Zimmerman?
I hope that everything that you just said, Counselor, you'll put in writing, because trying to track you as quickly as you read through things, it's not like it was a useful time.
Counselor, before you get into, I apologize. I just got a note from the clerk that the YouTube streaming is not showing the captions, which is an accessibility issue. I'm wondering if we can take a 5-minute recess and come right back to you before you launch into your amendments. Get up and move around for 5 minutes. Yes. Keelan, that'll give you what you need. Thank you.